So this is lesson 4, addendum, so it's like 4.5 if you want to get into that. We barely touched on this, but here's a question you're going to see. If f of x equals x squared, find the derivative of the inverse of x at y equals 9. So this is kind of tricky. So here's what I do. All right. I know that y equals x squared. I just work better with the x's and y's. So, I mean, the f of x is the y, that sort of thing. So I will say, all right, well, if 9 equals x squared, then x equals plus or minus 3, probably 3, because that's the way these things always seem to work. I'll come back to it. Here's what we know about inverses. All right, f of negative 1 to the x equals x. So if I take the derivative, f prime, leave it, times f to the negative first of x equals 1. So that's chain rule, f to the negative first prime. Leave it, chain rule it. So they'll say, find the derivative of the inverse. There it is sitting right there. So it's 1 over the derivative of the function with the inverse value put in. Oh boy. So let's see what we got here. All right, y equals x squared. F, we'll call it y prime equals 2x. Great. So how do I solve this? The derivative of the inverse is 1 over the derivative of the original function, but with the inverse of the x value. All right, so probably going to be putting 3 in here. So f negative first of x prime equals 1 over, here's my derivative, all right, and plug in 3, the x value. That's what's here is the x value. This is where I get lost if I plug in the x or the y and I'm back and forth. Look at this down here. 1 of d dy of f of y. Yeah, that's, well, extremely confusing. Extremely confusing. So that's 1/6. Another way to look at it would be to say, all right, let's go ahead and look at this as an inverse. If the function is y equals x squared, then the inverse is x equal to y squared. In other words, y equals square root of x. Y is 9. X would be 81. So it's very easy to get confused on this. Well, wait a minute. No, I just wrote the inverse, so we don't even have to get into that. Let's just go with dy dx equals 1 over 2 root x, 1 over 2 times root 9, because now the numbers are flipped. It was 3 comma 9, now it's 9 comma 3, which is also 1/6. All right. Hopefully I've confused the heck out of you, but I will say that this is what I do whenever I see these problems right here, and then I solve it and I go from there. So here's the formula. It doesn't really help, like I said, but let's just do some examples. Find the derivative of the inverse when y equals 7. All right, well, you take the original function, you find the derivative, 3x squared. Then you back solve, 7 equals x to the third minus 1. 8 equals x to the third, x equals 2. And then you say the derivative of the inverse, that big clunky way I wrote up there is not a lot of fun, equals 1 over 3x squared when x equals 2 equals 1 over 12. I'll do it the other way. xy. I don't know where I'm going to write this. X equals y to the third minus 1. Let's do it implicitly. Y equals 3y squared dy dx. Dy dx equals 1 over 3y squared when y equals, we flip the values now, 2. Right, you might be tempted to put in 7. Remember, we flip the values now, so x is 7, y is 2. And again, that's why I get so confused. 1/12. All right, here's what I just said. If f of a is c, then f of c is a. Right, we want to find the derivative at x equals a. If we're doing it this way, we'll find the derivative at y equals a, still the same value, if we do it this way. I've never done it this way before. I find that fascinating that I'm doing this right now. By the way, if you find this very confusing, that's fine. After you do some examples, it'll really come together for you. So let's do some examples. Let's see if we can do it both ways, see if I'm smart enough to get that. I doubt it. Let's do it the weird way first. X equals y squared plus 4. First things first, 29 equals x squared plus 4. So the point is subtract 4 square root 5 comma 29. But this way, the point becomes 29 comma 5 because we're just slapping the inverse in there. So let's find dy dx. 1 equals 2y dy dx. dy dx equals 1 over 2y. Y equals 5 equals 1/10. Let's try it this way. dy dx equals 2x. Yeah, I'll do it this way. The derivative of the inverse will be 1 over 2x when x equals 5 equals 1 equals 1/10. I'd love to say, I know exactly what I'm doing. I don't. But it's very confusing to me. If you're a lot of smarter people than me, I've had students all the time go, yeah, that makes sense. I'm like, it does. I'm like, well, that's nice. So whatever. Let's stick with this way for now. So f of x equals 8. 2x to the third plus 5x plus 1. 2x to the third plus 5x minus 7 equals 0. 2 times negative 7 is negative 14. I'm going to throw x to the third. Well, I'd have to graph it then. Never mind. I was going to factor it. I'm just going to guess and check. Let's try 1. 0 doesn't work. 1. 2 plus 1. Hey, 1 works. So x equals 1. So our point is 1 comma 8. And f prime of x equals 6x squared plus 5. So the derivative of the inverse is 1 over 6x squared plus 5 when x equals 1 equals 1/11. Could do it the other way, flip the x and y, see where it takes us. Sorry about that. Should get the same answer. All right, 9 equals 3x to the third minus x plus 7. Plug in 1. I can put this in my calculator and check it, but I'm just going to guess and check. 3 minus 1, 2 plus 7 is 9. Well, I guess we got lucky. 1 comma 9. By the way, it's called finding the answer by inspection, which is ludicrous, but what are you going to do? So f prime of x equals 9x squared minus 1 ddx of the inverse equals 1 over 9x squared minus 1. X equals 1 equals 1/8. And y equals 1, x equals 2. I'll do it for you if you want. So the point is 2 comma 1. dy dx. dy dx. Negative 3 times 8 x to the negative 4th equals negative 24 over x to the 4th. Derivative of the inverse equals 1 over negative 24 x to the fourth when x equals 2. This is going to flip up top. 2 times 2 is 4. That's going to cancel. Actually, times 2 is 8. It's going to cancel negative 3 over 2. So we're going to get negative 2/3. And 1 equals 2x minus x to the third. Plug in 1, 2 minus 1 works. 1 comma 1. So dy dx equals 2 minus 3x squared. The derivative of the inverse, one over 2 minus 3 equals negative 1. How often do I see this? Once every third exam, if that. Good luck and happy math.